Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you state
She's asking a
categorically,
question. Don't
Mr.
be
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You are
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a
question.
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and we are available 24/7 with extra shows, content, guests, analysis, archives to all of our shows at davejanda.com. We're there for you 24/7. Unfiltered, uncensored, and I go into much greater depth on that platform than I can on any social media platform or on the radio. Why? Because there are no choke points at davejanda.com. But there are on any other avenue you choose to listen to or watch. It's that simple. You got to hand it to the globalist cult. They are evil, they are sinister, but they are thorough at trying to block all avenues of information for you to have to make better decisions, to preserve your freedoms and liberties, and to enhance your life. They don't want any of that for you. In fact, they want you destitute. They want you destroyed. And the information we provide is the antidote to their evil potion, their evil concoction that they have inflicted upon people around not just our country, but around the world for decades. One of the entities they use to get more power and control and financial resources, that's what they're all about, those three things, is war. They use war to obtain power control, more power control and financial resources. They use war to decimate the, quote, useless eaters. After all, it's your family and my family and those we know and love around us that get drafted, that get called to war, to fight the bankers' wars, as Major General Smedley Butler told us almost 100 years ago in his book, War is a Racket. They also use it for money laundering, to enrich themselves. And they also use it as a diversion. So that when the other operation they're involved with, they want to keep behind the curtain, they create wars so that you watch the wars and say, well, the reason why, in this case, the reason why the financial system is coming down is because of that war in Russia, Ukraine, that war in the Middle East, that upcoming war in China with Taiwan. No. The war is serving a purpose for them. Money laundering, getting rid of useless eaters, death and destruction, they love that, the cult. But also as a means of diversion. So the title of this presentation today is Money Laundering, War, and the Financial Endgame. This is from the former mayor of New York. From 100 years ago. 100 years ago. The mayor of New York, John Hyland, said the following, quote, "The real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy legs, operative word slimy, over our cities, states, and nation. At the head is a small group of banking houses, generally referred to as, quote, international bankers. This little group run our government for their own selfish ends. It operates under cover of a self-created screen and seizes our executive officers, legislative bodies, schools, courts, newspapers, and every agency created for the public protection," end quote. Mayor of New York, John Hyland, from 100 years ago. The problem, as I see it, one of the problems in the freedom movement is when the cult implements their chaos agenda, their war agenda, too many people say, wow, what a series of bad accidents that this is occurring. What a series of bad coincidences that this is occurring. What a bad series of just incompetent people running the show is the reason why this has occurred. No. Everything we have seen, everything we are seeing, everything we're going to see in the near future is not an accident, it's not a coincidence, and it's not from incompetence. It's all willful, and it's all planned. Right now, we have a four-front war. Russia-Ukraine, Middle East, China-Taiwan, and domestically. Not just the United States. Every country has their own domestic situation where government cult puppets and all these government officials, the highest level, they're not in the upper tier. They are high middle level puppets, but they're not in the upper tier. Above them are the banking conglomerates. And who runs the banking conglomerates? The banking families. Should we say them again? Oh, this really pisses them off. Good. I think I will. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Lazards, the Pinkuses, the Warburgs, the Seifs, the Loebs, and the very top of the pyramid, the Payseur, Payseur family. They've been running the show for many, 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 many decades. So we just had the old money laundering scheme. Congress, just in the United States, passed a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. $61 billion to Ukraine. Oh, there's a real good dumpster fire to dump more billions, right? What have we already put over there? $120 billion that we know of, not including the black budgets. So now we're up to like, 108, coming up on a couple $100 billion. Oh, yeah. We couldn't have used that other places. No, of course not. In our own country? No. $61 billion to Ukraine, $26 more billion to Israel, and $8 billion to the Taiwan situation. But zero for the protection of our own border. Not a dime, not a penny. You know, it's interesting. I want to give you a quote from a contact of mine in D.C. That's what he said. Dave, quote, "We send huge amounts of money labeled as foreign aid because it's easier to launder that money back into the U.S., into U.S. politicians' pockets once it is offshore," end quote. Less checks and balances. How much of this money, the taxpayer money, that's been funneled to this World Economic Forum scum, Zelensky, in Ukraine, how much of that has been laundered back, not just amongst themselves, amongst the criminals in Ukraine, but back here to the United States to these government scum that either have an R or D after their name? Remember, they really all have a G after their name for globalist. They're all owned and operated by a criminal syndicate. One political party. I've been telling you that for 14 years on the radio. The people who know me personally, I've been telling them that for over 30 years. So that bill was a money laundering nirvana for the cult. And the bill, another portion of that same bill, allowed for confiscation of Russian dollar assets in order to help fund more money down the line for Ukraine. It's an act of war. The financial war started many, many decades ago, but it escalated to a nuclear event in March of 2022 when the United States and the West confiscated, PR term for stole, $300 billion of Russian assets. Oh, we just froze them. Oh, no. The United States is now taking $8 billion in that bill and sending those Russian assets over to Ukraine. Act of war. The United States is pushing Europe. The majority of that $300 billion is housed in Belgium. They're pushing like crazy to get that money sent. Because why? More money laundering without checks and balances. And Ukraine got this money, and in spite of the week before, the CIA, which is not exactly an ethical, honest organization of its own, right? We've dissected them before, hundreds of times on this platform. What did former director of the CIA under Trump say, Pompeo? At the CIA, we lie, we cheat, we steal, and then laughed about it. It's the American experience, I think he said. Ukraine gets their, it's from Zero Hedge, Ukraine gets their billions despite CIA director warning Zelensky to stop stealing so much money. That didn't stop these dudes from sending it over because they know something's coming back for their pockets, so they're cool with it. And then you have people asking, well, why in the world is there no opposition to this? Because there's one political party, all owned by the criminal syndicate. They're controlled. They're bribed, they're blackmailed. According to a new FEC report, this new House Speaker Johnson received $524,000 for the Israeli PAC, Political Action Committee, and a $95,000 payment from a foreign lobby group shortly after passing the $14.5 billion military aid package earlier this year. But it's not just the money. Many people are saying, well, he also signed off on the essentially illegal surveillance stuff that the government can do on American citizens that are innocent. He signed off on that. He's pushing. He said he wasn't going to let this money go to Ukraine. Then he did. And he was going to push for border security and border funding and finishing the wall and higher security. And he did none of that. And, well, why is that? Because it's not just the money that's part of it. He went in a room and he met some folks. And with them, they had a file. Mike Johnson, have a seat. Mr. Speaker, have a seat. You have this FISA renewal to do. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that because it really violates the Fourth Amendment of every American citizen. You also have some funding for Ukraine you got to get through. And, no, I'm not going to do that because, well, that's just a cesspool and it's already being laundered and Zelensky and his generals are all in, we're not going to do that. And we're going to put some money into the border and we're not going to send any money to Israel or Taiwan. Let them handle their own problems. American taxpayers had enough. Mike, did we show you this file? Did we show you this file? Let's open the file. Have you take a look. Do you think it'd be wise that what you're looking at right now, Speaker Johnson, do you think it'd be wise that this get out in public? That your wife and kids, your friends, your family, the people who voted you into office know about this stuff? You don't think that, wow, look what's here. And if you don't think that might, change their mind about you, take a look on the other side of the file. This other side, there's some pictures. Take a look at those. Do you think they'd be really fired up about those pictures? That's what they did, folks. It's not just the money. They are 99% of them compromised. Ron Paul. Of all the people I've dealt with in Washington, Ron Paul is, I believe, the most honest person I came in contact with. One of the most honest. One of the very few honest people I came in contact with, I should say. He recently wrote, "You only had to listen. Ron Paul destroys Speaker Johnson for betraying America. Former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul, this was from Zero Hedge, has gone completely ham on Speaker Johnson. First writing an op-ed that Johnson has betrayed liberty and the Constitution after reauthorizing FISA surveillance. But he's also been called out for being a complete sellout. Quote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, this is Ron Paul speaking, is reported to have bragged to his colleagues about how easily Speaker Johnson gave the globalists everything they wanted and asked for nothing in return. He added that Johnson reached across the aisle, stiffed the Republican majority, and elected him speaker, and pushed through a massive gift to the warfare corporate welfare state in passing that massive $95 billion package to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Yeah. And then they don't enter into peace negotiations because peace doesn't make any money for the military-industrial complex or for the globalist cult. But war does. So you saw the undermining of the Russia-Ukraine peace initiatives that were occurring within a month of it starting in February of 2022. And they'll fan the flames for war to generate more funding that ultimately some of it comes back into the politicians' pockets back in D.C. It's all part of the money laundering war operation. Blinken threatens China over Russia ties. And Putin said, well, wait, if you're going to take our assets, not a one-way street. Putin to the United States, I can freeze assets too. Let's start with $400 million from J.P. Morgan Chase's accounts. You know, the bank of the U.S. government. And where this is headed, folks, is in a financial endgame. You see, the cult has rigged the buildings to implode in their own footprint financially. Because they want to get rid of the reserve currency of the dollar, which ultimately takes down the financial status of the United States, which is their speed bump to their New World Order. And they want to replace the dollar with something that the banksters completely control. They're central bank digital currencies that can be used to strip every person who doesn't think the right way of not just their assets, but their life. Just think of what Trudeau and Freeland did up in Canada with the truckers. That was kind of a little preview. Or getting rid of the dollar and, again, banker-created paper currencies backed by nothing called special drawing rights, SDRs, a basket of currencies that they control that would then be used for trading purposes rather than the dollar. They get a bigger cut of the pie that way of every transaction that occurs. Not that they're already not getting pretty good as it is with the dollar, because who prints the dollar? The Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve is not part of the United States government. That went into effect in 1913 with Woodrow Wilson, the globalist cult hack that he was, that transferred the money printing capabilities to a group of bankers from the Treasury Department. Meanwhile, Putin and Xi, who are globalists, broke away from the banking globalist group because, well, they didn't think they were getting a big enough cut of the pie. Hey, they're all for the system coming down. But they want to have a bigger cut of that pie. So when they weren't being allowed to have a bigger cut of that pie as the system comes down, they launched on their own. Hence the emergence of the BRICS group. And what are they doing? Making sure that as the dollar comes down, they're protected because they're creating their own payment system, clearing system, and they're creating their own currency for transactions that is backed by gold, silver, oil, natural gas, foodstuffs. while the dollar is backed by vapor, nothing. Nixon took care of that in 1971. So the money laundering and the war, it all ends up in a financial endgame. If you don't believe that they're moving away from the dollar, Lavrov, who's Russia's Secretary of State equivalent, says Russia and China are almost de-dollarized their trade. More than 90% of settlements are carried out in the two countries' national currencies at this point. China is grabbing all the gold they can get. Chinese have grabbed gold by the throat as capital flight accelerates. Chinese speculators have really grabbed gold by the throat. That's how John Reedy, chief market strategist of the World Gold Council, describes the scramble in the communist nation among investors looking to move money. And then from the South China Morning Post, Di Dongsheng, vice dean of Renmin University School of International Studies, stated, quote, China's investment in U.S. government bonds is fraught with risks, tepid returns, and other vulnerabilities, all of which should motivate Beijing to unwind its holdings further and avoid being held hostage, like Russia had been, by Washington's exorbitant privileges. He warned the enormous sums of Chinese assets and capital parked in the U.S. could be, quote, taken hostage by Washington if Beijing were to step up the defense of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. By that he means their invasion of Taiwan. Quote, there's no reason to load up on U.S. treasuries, Dee said. Quote, we have seen how Washington treated Russia's overseas assets and its sequestration of German and Japanese assets during World War I and World War II. And then we have this from Russia. From Alexei Mozhin, who's the Russian International Monetary Fund representatives. These BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Saudi Arabia as part of the S, and add to it 41 other countries that have lined up to be part of BRICS because they don't want to trade in dollars anymore. And they're more interested in this new BRICS currency. And they don't want to be run by the banksters. They've seen how that ends. And they're siding with Putin and Xi. The international group could create an alternative currency, BRICS, based on their national legal tenders. This according to Alexei Mozhin, Russian IMF rep. The BRICS group of nations could offer an alternative currency in the event of a collapse of the dollar, lest you think that this was hyperbole that I was speaking about earlier. The expert noted that with the shortcomings of the current financial system, they're becoming more and more apparent. Mozhin explained that it is possible for the economic bloc's members of BRICS countries to create a currency that would be, quote, built on a basket of currencies of the 5 member countries: the Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee, the Russian ruble, Brazilian real, and the South African rand. Such a proposal is being discussed. In the event of the collapse of the dollar in the international monetary system, it would be necessary to turn that said BRICS accounting unit into a real currency backed by exchange goods such as gold, silver, oil, natural gas, and food products. The writing's on the wall. You need to protect yourself. Because the government, wherever you're viewing this video, whatever government you're involved with, they're not going to protect you. They have no interest in protecting you. They're owned and operated because they all got files on themselves that are used against them on a daily basis to do the wrong thing, to not be opposition to the freedom-stripping agenda of the globalist cult. Protect yourself. What are these BRICS countries doing? They're accumulating huge amounts of gold and silver, physical gold and silver, which, if you look historically, is the single most effective financial insurance policy, not investment, insurance policy you can have. That's the way to think of it. They are ensuring themselves and their country's well-beings in these BRICS countries by having physical gold and physical silver, not paper vapor assets, or not something that can be deleted with a keystroke. Because that happens too. Money laundering, war, and the financial endgame. I hope you'll join us at davejanda.com. We have a tremendous amount of information that puts you months, years ahead of the globalist constructed curve. Please join us. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com. Become a member of our Freedom Family, our premium service content and email service. It's $9 a month. It's less than a half of a pizza every month, and we provide you information on every front for your financial, for your health, for whatever the issue is at hand, well-being. You cannot afford not to be part of the family. We're there for you. I thank you for your time today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.